Welcome to the Everything Podcast. I am your host, and in today's episode, we will be reading another one of my wife's recaps for Bridgerton. This time it will be a recap of Season 4, Episode 3, titled The Field Next to the Other Road. I've already covered Episode 1 and 2 of Season 4, so if you missed that, I would recommend going back and watching those before continuing with this episode. So, without any further ado, Episode 3. Benedict and Sophie are on their way back to Mayfair. It starts to rain, so the two take refuge at one of Benedict's cottages. Benedict insists Sophie stay in a guest bedroom and offers for her to wear any of the clothes in the wardrobe. Benedict did in fact get hurt whilst fighting the guy. He wasn't stabbed in the back by the glass like I thought, but rather had a deep cut on his side. Sophie wakes to Benedict screaming in his sleep because he had a terrible fever from the cut. Sophie immediately tends to his wounds and Benedict thanks her. In Benedict's fever dream, he manages to see his lady in silver whilst looking at Sophie and asks her not to leave. Sophie seems to be shocked and stays with him to look after him. But just so that you know, he doesn't actually know that it is her. Lady Whistledown seems to get word that Lady Penwood had let go of a maid, and it seems rather difficult to replace that particular maid. Lady Penwood had to bribe other household maids to work for her. It took about 3 or 4 maids to replace our Sophie. It shows that Lady Penwood made Sophie do way more than normal amounts of maids' work. Lady Violet surprises Eloise by allowing her to not go to a garden party, but the condition was to chaperone Hyacinth's lessons. Varley has been so loyal to Lady Featherington that it was very shocking to see Varley consider taking an offer from another family. So Lady Featherington takes Varley's request for a raise into consideration. Because of how Sophie had helped Benedict, she is treated as a guest at the cottage. Mrs. Crabtree insists that Benedict and Sophie stay at the cottage until Benedict's wounds heal. While at the cottage, Sophie is not allowed to do chores, and as she is Benedict's guest. Because of what Lady Penwood had made Sophie do, it is obvious that Sophie is unable to simply sit still and relax. So Queen Charlotte seems puzzled by Lady Whistledown's talk of maids and insists she wants gossip. It seems to me the Queen is very lonely and is becoming more and more obvious as time is passing. Francesca is worried as she has been married for a year and is still not yet with child. I noticed that and thought it was because the couple loves their peace and alone time, and I didn't think they want a big family. Sophie continuously surprises Benedict with how smart she is. It's no surprise to us, as I imagine she had lessons up until her father's funeral. It surprised me that Sophie is able to speak French though. So Lady Featherington gives Varley a gift instead of raising her wages, which hadn't been raised in 20 years. For those wondering, the gift for Varley contains a few of Lady Featherington's old dresses. In my opinion, the dresses are some of the ugliest ones Lady Featherington had, but okay. It is a welcome sight to see Penelope and Colin still deeply in love. Francesca confides in Penelope about her worries, but they get interrupted and don't get to finish their conversation. I wonder if they are touching on the topic of being barren. Lady Danbury seems to be getting annoyed with how much time the Queen is requesting of her. After Sophie had been fired, it has caused mayhem for many households, and everyone is being forced to steal one another's maids, footmen, and other servants. Sophie follows Benedict outside as she is worried about him. Benedict had taken Gregory's kite outside to fly, and the two enjoy flying the kite. It is obvious to me that they have become very close without them realizing it, and they definitely have chemistry. Mrs. Crabtree also notices their chemistry and is worried for Sophie as she knows she is a maid. During Hyacinth's lessons, we notice that Eloise is somewhat rethinking her life choices. Francesca confides in her mother. We see yet again the very awkward conversation of marital duties, very similar to the one with Lady Violet that Lady Violet had with Daphne. It always ends with leaving you. It always ends with leaving you having more questions than answers, with all the code Lady Violet uses in her conversation, and apparently all the code I use to try get through a sentence. Sophie accidentally wonders where Benedict is swimming in the river, and I should remind you that there is no such thing as drawers or swimwear in this area, or in this era. So Sophie hides behind a tree, and Benedict catches her. It turns out that Sophie was walking near the river because Mrs. Crabtree had told her about it. Naughty, naughty. Be ready for the next moment, because my jaw just dropped. Benedict kisses Sophie passionately. Sophie then goes back to the cottage and walks past Mrs. Crabtree. Soon after Benedict walks past Mrs. Crabtree, she immediately noticed that something had happened between them. Mrs. Crabtree then warns Benedict about what his actions with Sophie might cause. Benedict then tells Mrs. Crabtree about the lady in silver. This is where we realize Benedict doesn't know Sophie is the lady in silver. Varley finally confronts Lady Featherington about how she has been mistreated with wages, so Varley decides to leave the Featherington household. Lady Danbury addresses the topic of the Queen needing a new lady in waiting. Lady Danbury promises to bring the Queen someone whose company the Queen will enjoy. Benedict apologizes to Sophie for kissing her. Francesca confides in Penelope once again. Francesca gets straight to the point and asks for an honest answer. Penelope encourages Francesca to be spontaneous, if you catch my drift. Lady Violet seems to be avoiding Lord Anderson because she's anxious about starting a new relationship. So the two sit down together in private to talk about where they had been and where the two of them will go. Relationship-wise, of course. So Lord Anderson comforts Lady Violet and they finally kiss. The music had just started getting spicy, so we all know where this is going. However, they stop kissing before it goes further, for now, as it's obvious that it will happen soon. There's so much tension between Sophie and Benedict as they make their journey back towards Mayfair. It seems to me in this episode that this episode was one to discuss some issues such as the servants' issues in all the households, the marital issues, which back then was very much an unspoken topic. Some of these issues seem to be resolved in this episode, but in all honesty, I think most of the issues will remain for the next few episodes and maybe carried into the new season. Who knows? But in any ways, let me know what you think of this episode, and let me know what you thought of this review/recap of episode 3. Pop those in the comments below. And also, if you enjoyed today's episode, you can also let us know in the comments. That would be lovely. And please do show us some love by liking, sharing, and subscribing. But that is it for today's episode of the Everything Podcast. And we will see you in the next one. Goodbye.